Ready, aim, fire, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to go? Ready, aim, fire. No, for Joe Biden, it's ready, aim, and whenever you feel like it, that would be great. Joe Biden is really a preposterous president. Preposterous. I think that's the word. Utterly absurd and ridiculous, and that makes him dangerous. Now, he has completely opened our southern border, and now the whole world knows our skies are wide open as well. What China did, I believe, is a test to see what we would do, how we would do it, and no one is impressed. A total embarrassment. China, our enemy, just ate our breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a midnight snack, too. The Biden administration's explanation, well, Trump had China balloons, too. Total lie, by the way. More on that in a little bit. Anyway, a U.S. president, any U.S. president, has the constitutional responsibility to protect our borders. And you can look it up. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. Now, why blow off one of his key responsibilities? Does he not care? Is Joe Biden somehow compromised? Well, if you've been watching Joe closely, we do know some absolutes about him. He has no integrity. He is exceedingly dumb, and he's greedy. He has a lust for real estate. According to him, he said this out loud: expensive clothes, fast cars, weirdo, high-end photography. And you can't get this stuff, by the way, on a government salary or royalties from a vice presidential memoir. You got to go shopping. And it looks like Joe Biden went shopping globally. Taking Hunter Biden to China. Here they are arriving in Beijing, and Joe meeting with Hunter's shady friends on that trip to China. Remember this? Maybe you don't. Buried by the fake news.
Whether I'm in New York or whether I'm in Washington, D.C., a friend and a business associate is in the hotel, and my dad's staying there. Is it inappropriate for me to have coffee with them?
Yes, and potentially illegal. His entanglements with China are deep, with the rich people, with the spy community. And why is he there? He's there because of his old man.
I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of literally, Dr. Patrick Koh, the spy chief of China, who started the company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded, and is now missing. The richest man in the world is missing, who was my partner. He was missing since I last saw him in his $58 million apartment and signed a $4 billion deal to build the largest LNG port in the world.
So that's a lot of numbers and China and Hunter, and he's all emotional about it. He was worried about the heat, right, from the New York Times? Well, listen to the sense of relief in Joe Biden's voice when the story finally comes out.
Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear. And anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love you.
Joe Biden's almost always talking for the record, you know? It's an old trick of bureaucrats, you know, just in case anybody else is listening. I'm not alarmed here. I'm just checking in, and I love you, pal, but if an article comes out in the New York Times and it's about you, hey, let's talk right away. That's how normal people would handle it, my impression. So when Joe Biden gets notification that a Chinese surveillance airship is over the continental United States, it's not a cut and dried situation. Certainly not like this. He says it was easy peasy, right? Very simple. This is presidential decision-making 101.
I order the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, which was several more days. So it could travel another 2,000 miles across our entire country before taking that shot. Yeah, take a look. There it goes, all the way to South Carolina. And then you take the shot. Joe is probably not telling the truth. That's almost a certainty, okay? To allow that thing from China to cruise all across our country, well, I've always been confident that Joe is incompetent. And after Afghanistan, Joe, I am firmly convinced, does not know how to be commander-in-chief. Now, sometimes you follow the military's advice. Sometimes you say, get me more options. You guys are wrong. You got to do it this way, not your way. Instead, in a country, we are suddenly, I don't know, consumed with safety, right? Weren't we founded by pioneers, people who kind of took a risk? But now it's all safety first.
I order the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China?
He waited until after. Didn't say a word about this until after. Why not? And safety. It's all about safety. Safety, safety, safety.
The president gave instructions to have it handled, to have it shot down in a way that was safe.
Obviously, the military's judgment was that it was much safer to do it over water.
The two priorities by the military and the Biden administration were to keep people safe and to only shoot it down when it was safest. And they did that as soon as it hit the coastline.
Hey, you know, we had bigger problems than that balloon crashing into the ground, potentially. Blaine Holt is a retired general in the Air Force, a pilot, one of the smartest men in America when it comes to national defense, and he's a Newsmax contributor.
I'm much, much more concerned about the blind trust that we placed in this thing not having an electromagnetic pulse capability,
right,
some sort of biological weapons on board. What were we thinking, allowing this thing to come over our nuclear missile fields when we couldn't 100% assure ourselves of intent? We couldn't possibly know what was on board that thing and what the risk would be to our ability to defend ourselves.
Well, that's a lot of stuff to be worried about, right? Could have been a general alarm issued or something like that. Stay indoors, go to the basement. There's a reason the Biden administration is not saying as to why this thing was not destroyed almost immediately after it came into our country. And they're not telling us. Instead, they're going back to their safe space, their favorite space. Trump. Trump is to blame. Biden is good.
The Pentagon says that they know of the Chinese doing this at least 4 other times previously, once at the beginning of the Biden administration, 3 times during the Trump administration.
Well, the Pentagon has since disclosed that it's apparently happened 4 times before.
We should remember that this is now known to have happened under the Trump administration multiple times.
And we're also told, by the way, that this happened 3 times under the previous president. Obviously, there were no public notifications there.
This is worse than spin. These are flat out lies, total lies, and all damage control to protect Joe Biden for his ineptitude and incompetence. And a lot of people felt vulnerable last week. We could all understand what was happening. You could be in first grade, in kindergarten, and understand that a China balloon was floating over America and it did not belong there. Everyone was transfixed. America wanted leadership, craved leadership at that moment. Instead, we got this.
There is no one more clear about what he stands for and who he fights for than our president, Joe Biden.
My name's Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband. I want to be real clear. She's a Philly girl.
Oh, brother. She's not a Philly girl. What are they hooping and hollering all about, right? And why is he so happy? Why is he so blithe and carefree? Maybe because the balloon is not over his head. Now, a true leader would have been more concerned, or at least faked it. The swamp and the fake news are giving him protection and all kinds of credit when he does not deserve any. And he followed the swamp playbook. Officially, he followed all the recommendations of the military. That's what you're supposed to do. Always listen to the men and women in uniform.
The administration did what politicians usually say they want administrations to do, follow the advice of the Pentagon, of the generals, of the admirals.
The important thing is here that the president acted decisively and responsibly.
The White House is adamant that the president was listening to the advice of his military commanders, who told him to wait.
Is that good enough? Is that how it's supposed to work? Just listen to what they say? I don't know what the hell they said. I'm sorry. I mean, General Milley is the chief military advisor to the president. This guy.
I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it.
Here's the problem with a guy like Joe Biden. He doesn't know much. Never served in the military, and that's fine. Sometimes you're overly intimidated by people who served when you haven't served. That's wrong. Sometimes you're overly contemptuous if you've hung around the military a lot. Somewhat understandable, but it can get you in trouble as well. The military is not always right. You need political leadership to make the right call. Having served in the military, I know firsthand they can get it wrong. And having been alive in America, all of us know how badly they screwed up Iraq and Afghanistan.
I think that the development of the Afghan army is on a very good path right now.
We've made tremendous strides, incredible progress in the last 20 months.
The solid partnership has been the thing that has been really striking for me all around the country.
It's fair to ask if we're winning in Afghanistan. I believe the answer is yes, and several facts allow me to say that with confidence.
And we've seen some great progress in some of the operations based, even at the tactical level, on the intelligence structure.
They showed me the positive changes they have helped bring about, the villages they can now enter, the Afghan police and forces they are training and trying to improve.
It was always the same record, over and over and over again. Our troops, our sailors, our Marines, they were let down too often by military leadership and, yes, civilian leadership as well. Anyway, back to the balloon debacle. The fake news and the swamp continue to cover for Joe, but there are some cracks emerging. Leon Panetta, he was Secretary of Defense under Barack Obama, big-time Democrat, and listen to him on the fake news. He is not impressed with Joe's handling of this.
If we were aware of the balloon, I think we should have taken steps to prevent it from entering our airspace. And I'm not sure that we should have allowed it to simply cross over the country, cross over what were obviously sensitive military sites. I don't see the logic of that.
Neither do I. Neither do a lot of people. Good for you, Secretary Panetta. Although bad on you for signing that phony letter bailing out Hunter and Joe Biden, saying the laptop was Russia disinformation. Yeah, you signed that letter, didn't you? But it's interesting. A guy like that, who's bending over backwards to protect Biden, is saying, enough with this guy? I think that's very interesting. Anyway, they screwed this thing up in a million different ways, but they bring it back to Trump with a big assist from the fake news.
Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, was speaking at a summit here earlier today, and he actually said the reason we know about this now is because from the very early days of the Biden administration, the president directed his national security team, the intelligence community, to be more vigilant about Chinese espionage efforts, including those over American soil. Sullivan essentially saying that one reason why the Trump administration didn't know about these surveillance balloons that occurred during his administration was because they weren't looking for them, that this is all a result of President Biden, who has been very closely a student of the U.S.-China relationship for decades, especially in the last 10 years since he first met with Xi Jinping.
Is he there under duress? I mean, look at him. I mean, that is kind of hypnotic, right? He just said, did they hypnotize him? Did you hear what he said? Joe Biden was the one who said, look for the balloons. It was Joe Biden. They wouldn't have been looking for him if it wasn't for Joe Biden. Donald Trump, you needed the leadership of Joe Biden. They weren't looking for these things otherwise. 1959, I think we had NORAD set up, all right? A listening post watching and waiting for bad guys, communists coming into America. Here's what it looks like today. And if you don't recognize it, say from a documentary, maybe you saw the movie with Matthew Broderick, War Games, huh? Remember he hacks into the Whopper